You're not who you were, but you're not yet who you could be. The Gate of Return, Part 1. There is a moment in every man's journey that is quieter than death and louder than destiny. It is the threshold, and you're standing on it. You've survived the collapse. You've tasted silence, walked through shadows, stripped away illusions, but you are not yet free. Why? Because the pain of who you were still calls, and the weight of who you could be still terrifies. This is the in-between, and this is where most men go back. They return to comfort disguised as love. They call old habits personality. They kneel before the gods of distraction, begging once more for sedation instead of transformation. But you, brother, you didn't come this far to die in the doorway. The war between eras of self. There is an invisible line between the man you've outgrown and the one you have yet to claim. It's not time that divides them, it's courage. The older self whispers in familiar tones, "She'll come back. You've already done enough. Who do you think you are to want more?" And the future self? He does not beg. He watches. He waits. Not with impatience, but with inevitability. Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But he left us with a hidden truth. You will lose everything false to become it. And that's why the threshold burns. It asks you to leave the survival version of you behind, to bury the man who adapted, and to birth the one who can create. The temptation to go back. You feel it, that tug in the ribs when the silence gets too wide. When you're almost done healing, and she texts, "Hey." You feel the desire to call your old friends who made you feel funny instead of seen. You crave the old pleasure that dulled the ache faster than truth could heal it. Why? Because transformation hurts. Because peace is foreign. Because aloneness, real aloneness, not loneliness, is terrifying to the self that only learned to survive through others. But this is what separates you from the crowd. They go back, you go through. The Stoic crossroads, comfort or courage. The Stoics never promised safety. They offered sovereignty. Not the kind you wear, the kind you bleed for. Seneca wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." The threshold is where time sharpens, where hours become weapons or offerings, where each decision either fortifies your inner citadel or fractures it. This is not the part where you feel ready. It's the part where you choose anyway. And that choice? It's the only initiation that matters. The echo of fear. Why men stay small. Let's speak plainly. You fear that if you fully cross this threshold, you'll lose her for good. You'll be too much for others. There'll be no one waiting on the other side. But here's the deeper truth. There is no one coming to save you. There never was. And that's what makes you unstoppable. You don't need saving. You need summoning. Ritual of crossing. What to leave behind. Before a warrior becomes a king, he burns his banner. Not the one that says who he wants to be, but the one that kept him hidden. So burn this. The need to be understood. The obsession with being chosen. The excuses disguised as identity. And carry this. Silence as sword. Presence as power. Self-respect as unshakable kingdom. A glimpse beyond the gate. You're not there yet, but you've seen it. The man who wakes early, not to prove, but to build. The man who does not explain his peace. The man who doesn't chase love because he has become it in action. You glimpsed him. In a breath, in a memory, in a moment of complete stillness, He is not an illusion. He is waiting at the other side of this threshold. Now choose. You can step back, reclaim comfort, make your pain pretty and your future quiet. Or you can take that step forward, not toward perfection, but toward possession of your time, your truth, your throne. This is not the climax. This is the crossing. In the next chain, we go deeper. The man you've been searching for, the wise, grounded, untouchable version of you, was never lost. He was simply buried. Next, chain 2. The return to the self, where we reclaim what was always ours. Stay with me, brother. The gate is opening. Chain 2. The return to the self. What if the man you've been looking for was never lost? The Gate of Return, Part 2. You've stepped through. The noise has faded. The crowd is gone. And now there is only you, but not the version the world knows, not the performative self, not the role, not the resume, not the reaction. No, the original you. Buried beneath all the personas, waiting beneath the ache. Not broken, not ruined, just unseen. This is the return, and it is the hardest path of all. Individuation, the journey no one can walk for you. Carl Jung called it individuation, the sacred, brutal, lifelong path of becoming your whole self. Not a copy, not a role, not a polished social mask, but the integration of all parts. The brave, the broken, the tender, the shadowed, the divine. Individuation is not self-improvement. It's self-revelation. The privilege of a lifetime, Jung wrote, is to become who you truly are. But here's the cost. You must meet every piece of you that you abandoned to survive. The false selves we built. You were never born disconnected. You learned to hide. When they mocked you, you became the funny one. When they ignored you, you became the loud one. When they hurt you, you became the strong one. These were not lies. They were survival. But now, they are in the way. You no longer need to survive. You're here to reclaim. Re-entering the inner citadel. The Stoics spoke of the inner citadel, a place within that cannot be shaken by the outside world. But what they didn't always say is this: you must rebuild it, brick by brick, in silence, in honesty, alone. So let me ask you, brother, have you dared to knock on your own door? Have you entered your soul, not as an intruder, but as a king returning from war? This is what it means to return to the self. Not a concept, not a mantra, but a homecoming. How do you know you've returned? You start laughing less often, but deeper. You stop seeking validation because truth doesn't beg. You begin to say no, without guilt. You speak less, but every word carries weight. You no longer perform peace. You are peace. You will still have wounds. You will still feel the ache, but you are no longer ashamed of them. And this is the sign that the man within has been found, not perfect, but present. Why we resist this return? Because the world profits from your forgetfulness. Because the old you was easier to manipulate. Because they don't know what to do with a man who remembers himself, a man who does not chase, but chooses, a man who does not need, but invites, a man who does not yell, but moves mountains in silence. You must understand this. Most people will not recognize you anymore. Let them. Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Jung wrote, "Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes." You are awakening, and that threatens those still asleep. Practices of the return. This is not spiritual theory. It must become muscle and marrow. So here's what to do. Sit in silence 15 minutes a day. Not to clear your mind, but to hear your truth. Write to the boy you once were. Ask him what he needed, and listen. Remove one dependency each week: sugar, scrolling, seduction, and observe the pain underneath. Speak one truth you've been avoiding. Out loud, even if only to yourself, not for glory, but for gravity. To walk heavier, because now you walk with all of you. The mirror moment. Stand in front of the mirror. Ask, is this the man I came here to be? Am I ruled by need or led by vision? What did I abandon to be liked? What would I reclaim if I no longer feared disapproval? Let the silence answer. Let your stillness echo back not an identity, but a presence. Let this be the moment you stop searching because you realize you've been here all along. You were never truly lost. Only scattered. Only distracted. Now you gather. Now you return. But the journey does not end here. In fact, it begins. Because finding the self is not the climax. Living as him is the real trial. And that is where we go next. Chain 3. The work is never over. This is not the end. This is the turning. The fire must now burn in action, not just reflection. Let's walk. The path is waiting. Chain 3. The work is never over. The Gate of Return, Part 3, Final Chain. So you made it. You stood at the gate. You stepped through the noise. You returned to yourself. But now you ask, is it done? Let me answer you like a brother. The work is never over. Not because you're broken, but because you are becoming. The illusion of arrival. Modern men crave finality. We want a finish line. A moment where we can say, I've made it. I'm healed. I'm whole. But the Stoics never promised that, and Jung never suggested it. They offered something more honest, more sacred. A path, not a place. A direction, not a destination. There is no coming to consciousness without pain, Jung said. People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. But you faced it. Now the question becomes, will you carry what you've seen into how you live? Because reflection is not enough. Awareness is not the final step. Embodiment is. From realization to ritual. The man who has awakened must now walk differently, not performatively, not to impress, but because he knows too much to go back. You must let your practices become ritual. Silence must not be a refuge, but a rhythm. Boundaries must not be a defense, but a form of respect. Self-respect must not be occasional, but a default state. Your words must weigh something. Your no must ring like iron. This is where philosophy becomes flesh, where ideals become action, where the man who saw the light must now be the light. Falling without failure. Here's what no one tells you. You will fall again. You will scroll again. You will ache again. You will crave again. But now you fall awake. And that changes everything. Because guilt is no longer your master. Awareness is now your compass. And returning to the path becomes your strength. The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. Marcus Aurelius. So dye it again, and again, and again. That is the work. The sacred fire. What drives a man once he stops chasing? What becomes his fuel once he no longer needs validation? Purpose. Not in a grand sense, not in slogans, but in daily sacred repetition. A quiet discipline, a reverence for self, a refusal to abandon yourself ever again. You no longer meditate to feel better. You meditate because silence is your temple. You no longer train your body to look good. You train because it is a vow of presence. You no longer speak to impress. You speak because you have something real to say. This is masculine spirituality in action. It's not loud. It's not flashy. But it is impossible to ignore. Becoming the path for others. Do you know why this matters? Because men like you are rare. Men who come back from the edge, men who do not drown in pleasure or numbness. And when others see you, they will feel something they can't name. Not intimidation, not even admiration, but permission. Permission to return, to stop performing, to stop running. You become a living doorway to the real. Not by preaching, but by embodying. What now? Now you live, not like before, but with reverence. You listen to your pain without shame. You protect your peace without apology. You choose your words as if they echo into eternity, because they do. You become slow, but deliberate, quiet, but powerful. Not because you want to seem strong, but because you are. You remember the boy who was neglected. You carry the man you are now with honor. And you die each day to who you no longer need to be. This is not the work of one season. This is the work of a lifetime. The final mirror. Stand now, straight, still, silent. Ask yourself, am I living with the awareness I earned? Am I building a life I won't need to escape from? Have I kept the promises I made in the silence? Do I walk like a man who has returned? Because the man who has returned cannot go back. He can only go deeper. And when life breaks him again, because it will, he does not collapse. He kneels, he breathes, he rises. Let this be your oath, not a vow to be perfect, but a vow to be present. Not a vow to never fall, but a vow to never abandon yourself when you do. You will forget, you will wander, but you now carry the compass, and you know the way home. This is not the end. This is the turn-in. This is the gate of return. Not to who you were, not to who they wanted you to be, but to the man you were meant to become. And brother, he was never gone. He was waiting. If this journey has moved something deep in you, subscribe to this channel, not for us, but for yourself, to remember, to return, to continue. Because the path is yours now. End of Season 1. The Stoic Jungian Return. The fire is yours now. Carry it well.